Inshallah. And this last question, hopefully. All right, this is how do we understand part 91 in Aqidah Tahawi, which discusses the unlawfulness of rebellion against the government, even if it is oppressive, in the current socio-political context. Now, this is, you would open up a serious can of worms here. It's like you put me on the spot. I mean, I've expressed my view about this publicly, so it's not as if it's not an easy, at least easy question for me to at least give my own perspective on it. You know, but understand that that's my particular perspective on the issue. But since it pertains to Imam Tahawi's Aqidah, لا نرى خروج على أئمتنا ولا ولاة أمورنا وإن جاروا, that we do not hold that it to be lawful to rebel against our leaders nor our governors, even if they are oppressive. That this particular doctrine is what we call a majoritarian doctrine. It is a doctrine that most of the Sunni scholars have considered to be orthodox teaching, and that that even when there is oppression amongst the in our lands, that it is not permissible for us to rebel against those oppressors. That we have been told to remain patient and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify the state of our leaders and of our governors, and not to curse them. That we're not to curse them, because when we understand the nature of the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is ul-Abideen an ar-Rahmah, it is to distance someone from Allah's mercy, that when we curse our leaders, then all it will do, if Allah answers our prayer, is just make them more oppressive. Because if Allah distances the person from His mercy, then that's fundamentally what will happen, that shaitan will become their leader, become their qareen. And so the ulama adopted that view out of, we call maslahah, out of interest of the maintaining peace. That there's usually because typically what will happen is a greater evil would result from rebellion than the evil which exists under an oppressive government. And so for that reason they discouraged it and adopted it as a mainstream teaching. Now we know that there are some scholars who disagree with this, and we know, of course, the case of Imam Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhum ajma'een, and the case of his rebellion against Yazid ibn Muawiyah, and the controversy surrounding that, and the fact that he was eventually abandoned by those people who called him to rebellion, and he was left in the lurch along with a number of members of his family. And so that in itself, for some people, they say this is a proof that rebellion is permissible. However, I would caution people that the Prophet ﷺ, he did say, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi," that whoever sees an evil, let him change it with his hand, and if not able to, then with his tongue; if not able to, then with their heart. And so basically in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ actually is attaching istita'a, or the rebellion to, or the removal of an evil, with the ability to remove it. So when people do not have the physical capacity to change the situation, then they themselves should not be calling for that drastic of a change, especially when we find that the governors have better weaponry and things like that than the masses do. They have better allies, or more allies than the masses have. That we can't just simply go out on the limb and just basically think or believe and hope that some people are going to come to our support, you see. And I believe that because of that, a lot of ill has come to Muslims in the Arab world recently, related to the Arab Spring. You know, I believe that, you know, because of those things not being given a lot of consideration, it wasn't really thought through well enough in terms of rebellion in a number of places. However, there was some limited success, but we still can question whether or not things are better now, today, for most of those places than they were prior to the start of these particular rebellions or revolutions that they're being called. So that is important, because even though we utilize the example of Imam Hussein as a reason for justifying rebellion, we have to remember that Imam Hussein's rebellion was not successful. We have to remember that as well. So in principle, yes, that under the right circumstances, rebellion is allowed, right? When it doesn't lead to a greater evil, right, than the evil that we're trying to change, see. But if we don't have the capacity to do so, then, right. Yes, fine.
That said, Assalamu alaikum. I'm just thinking that Musa alayhi salam is the most awful prophet in the Quran, right? Finding Revelation. And in part, you look at what his history was when he dealt with oppression. Right? So after shirk, one of the most egregious things that the believer can succumb to, be presented with, is oppression. And so, to the point, right, we talked about the best to remove harm with your hands, and the weakest is to have it in your heart. Often, the verbal word, just in that example, has merit to it. Now, naturally, I think if you want to identify something, maybe you should have a solution to it. But you can't minimize the power of the word.
Without doubt, yeah.
And lastly, oppression should never be accepted.
Yeah, no, the issue of not physically, rebelling is not a sign that one accepts oppression. It's just as a sign that an individual understands the limits of one's ability. It's not that I accept oppression. It's that the conditions are not right yet. You see, for rebellion, so Musa alayhi salam's examples. Remember that he wasn't calling for armed rebellion. Right. So we can reference Musa alayhi salam, but he's not calling for armed rebellion. He was simply asking for Pharaoh to let his people go. Right, exactly. He was demanding, right? Yeah, and he told him that I'm not going to be the one to deal you your death blow. It's going to be God. You see, now unless we are prophets and we're like Musa and we have the guarantee that the power of God is going to intervene in the same way they did with Musa alayhi salam, then that's not an accurate analogy to make, to say that, okay, well, it's okay for us to go out in arms against an oppressive ruler or whatever we want to call him, and risk our own lives and the future generations as well. That's the other part of it as well. I mean, the Prophet ﷺ, he was in Mecca for 13 years. Now he could have said, well, these people are oppressing us, and they won't let us practice our deen. They'll take up arms. Let's fight. That didn't happen. Fighting didn't happen until he got to Medina, and then the verses were revealed allowing them to fight. Because now, you know what? We're ready. We got an army now. He said we have our own home. You have a base of operation, you see. So, so we have to, the principle, is still what it is. That oppression is wrong, bad. But at the same time, we have to, if we want to rebel against it, you want to change it, then we have to make sure that the conditions on the ground are they prepare us or equip us with the ability to change it, to remove it. And then the other more important part, I think, is that we have to make sure that we don't try to remove it utilizing the same type of tactics that the enemy would utilize, you see. And that's a big problem that I found with a lot of Muslims who are in support of like certain rebellions in the Muslim world. It's like, I remember there's a brother had written me something on Twitter, and he was talking about, that we should be happy that the stuff is happening, and because the Imam Mahdi is going to come back, and I told him, I said, listen, brother, I'm not waiting for the Mahdi. And he was like, oh my God, what do you mean you're not waiting for the Mahdi? I said, listen, man, I don't care. The Mahdi can't save me. The Mahdi can't even save himself, right? And I can be in the army of the Mahdi, but if I'm the one out ripping people's chests open and taking their hearts and livers out and eating their livers, right? I don't care whose army. You can be the army of Isa bin Maryam. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to judge you on the basis of your unethical dealings. I don't care what army you're part of. So don't tell me that I should be happy that over 100,000 people have been killed in Syria and that 6 million people have been become refugees in different parts of the world. No, don't tell me that. I was in Morocco in the summer, you know, and this is very far away from Syria, this country, you know, and like after every single salah, there are some Syrian people standing up, Ya Ikhwan, they're asking for charity. Now, Moroccans already have to deal with their own poor people. And you can see on the faces of people that, man, subhanAllah, it's like, man, now we got to deal with somebody else's poor people, you see. So it's like, if we say, yeah, fight, 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 we should be willing to take people in as well. It's like, you know, yeah, you should fight, as a matter of fact, and if you run away, my home is open for you. But people are not doing that, for the most part, you know, in the Muslim world. So from afar, we're like, yes, rebel. And this is one of the problems with some of our scholars, unfortunately, that happened as well, that when it was happening over there, they were like, yeah, go for it. But then as soon as they came to their country, they're like, hold up, right? You know, so you understand, it's not a pleasant situation that people find themselves in. We should make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He right, exactly. Right, exactly, yeah. These other things, yeah. Yeah. The Syrian girls, they're subjected to prostitution in places like Jordan. You know, now they're going into prostitution to survive and things like that. You know, so what type of welcome is that? You see, you know, yeah, we want you to fight, but you know, we're not going to create any sort of system that is going to help to make your transition, you know, an easy transition. We're not welcoming you into our homes, but rather, you know, there are conditions on your welcome here. That you have to, this is what you have to do in order to survive in a Muslim country. You follow me? So, for me, my position has been that, you know, it just wasn't, I don't think it was right. And I think that one of the greatest proofs that it is, that generally, that what has happened recently, for me, shouldn't be supported, is when we just look to see what it did to the scholars. When you just look and see what it did to the scholars in the Muslim world, like people who we look at, you know, we see them taking pictures together. People used to hold up and elevate, you know, a very high status, you know, and then all of a sudden these same people now, you know, they're giving fatwas against one another. This one's okay to kill that one, and you know, and then some people, some of them on international television, you know, throwing, you know, names at one another, you know, you're crazy, you're stupid, and you got Alzheimer's, and you know, and it's like these are ulama. These are people who are supposed to be guides for us in times of darkness, in times of confusion. You see, and this to see what it's done to them, for me, is the greatest proof that it is not a sort of a holy type of engagement that is happening in that part of the world. And Allah knows best.